In this video, I'm going to give you a quick tip that will help you understand the principles that are in the new Helicopter Flying Handbook that recently replaced the Rotorcraft Flying Handbook. If you're an aspiring pilot or are currently a pilot, the new Helicopter Flying Handbook is something that you should be reading or have already read. As you read this book, you will come across many principles that are unique to helicopters, and they all have one thing in common: lift. And when you understand there are 4 factors that cause a wing or a blade to fly, you'll be able to correlate those helicopter principles with better stick flying skills. So what are the factors? Let's think of it like swimming. First of all, you need a hand. The larger the hand, the better you can swim. That's called surface area. Now that you have your hand, you're going to need some fluid, and this is known as pressure. The thicker the fluid, the easier you can fly. For example, like if you try to swim in water, it's much easier to swim in water than it is to swim in air. So when you have a blade and you translate that into air, if you have a thicker or a higher pressure system, the blade is going to fly better than if it were in a lower pressure system. And basically, the more pressure you have, the better you can fly. Okay, so now if you take your hand and you put it into water and just leave it there, nothing's going to happen. You're going to sink. You have to move that hand. So the movement of the hand is called velocity. That's the other factor. But we can't just have a hand, put it in some water, and move it back and forth like this and expect to swim. You have to put a little bit of an angle, known as an angle of attack. And what this does is it forces water downward or deflects water downward, which then forces or propels the hand upward. And this is another factor of lift. So to wrap it all up, we have a blade or a wing, which is a certain size. That's known as surface area. We're going to put that blade into some fluid. That's known as pressure. We're going to take that blade and we're going to move it. That's known as velocity. And then we're going to put an angle on the blade or the wing, and that is known as angle of attack. And these 4 elements will equate to lift. If you multiply them all together, you will have lift. This is known as the lift equation. Okay, so now that you know the factors that comprise lift, let's take these concepts and apply them to the principles in the Helicopter Flying Handbook that you're reading. Let's take dissymmetry of lift, for example. You're going to read about a principle called dissymmetry of lift. The helicopter is hovering and then translating into forward flight. So when the helicopter is hovering, the blades are rotating one direction at the same speed, at the same angle of attack or pitch angle. Okay, so the blades are flying through the same fluid, pressure stays the same, the angle of attack stays the same during the hover, the velocity stays the same, and the surface area doesn't change of those blades. But then you take the helicopter and you move it through forward flight. The fuselage is moving forward. The blades are rotating in one direction. So you have one of the sides of the blades that is moving with the helicopter, and that is known as the advancing side of the blade. So you have an advancing blade that is moving with the body of the helicopter, and then you have the other blade which is moving backward in relation to the helicopter. And this is known as the retreating side. So you have an advancing side and you have a retreating side. And what that means is you have a dissymmetry of lift, meaning one side has more lift than the other side. And if you were to break it down into why does one side have more lift than the other side of the rotor disc, you would say that the advancing side has more lift because it has more velocity, because it's moving forward with the fuselage. So as you read through these aerodynamic principles in the new Helicopter Flying Handbook, you're going to need to understand why there is more lift on one particular area of the rotor disc in terms of the 4 factors that comprise lift. For those of you who are listening to the audiobook course version of the Helicopter Flying Handbook, we have discussion boards at the bottom of every single topic so that you can ask questions to experienced helicopter pilots who have commercial experience, who love nerding out on why twirling metal blades can take tiny plastic baskets soaring through the air. Also, if you truly understand the concepts in the Helicopter Flying Handbook, you should have no trouble passing the quizzes at the end of every single chapter. They're not easy, I wrote them myself, but if you get better than a 90% on all of the quizzes, I will send you a free lift equation t-shirt. And if you are reading the paper or the PDF version of this book, all by yourself on an island somewhere, you can still join the helicopter pilot group on Avic Air. We host a monthly webinar where we dive a little bit deeper into these topics. You can also join a growing nation of helicopter pilots who are trying to improve the quality of life of this magnificent profession.